Hi everyone, Evan Alexander here with another CInema4d tutorial. You are not crazy, this is not CInema4d, this is Photoshop. But today I want to talk about ID passes, which are going to help us make our renders better after we've rendered them. So if we're inside of Photoshop or Procreate or After Effects or whatever your kind of editor of choice is, this is going to help you out. So here's a simple scene that I rendered, just a little yoga studio. Looking very nice. And then here is the ID pass. So if we turn this on, you can see. So what's happening is while I'm doing my renders with Corona in Cinema4d, at the same time, it's creating this for me, which is basically a solid field of color for each individual object in the scene. You can see here it's respecting my depth of field in this scene, which is nice. So let's say we want to do a little work on this pillow here, this pad, and maybe just make some level adjustments to it. So in the olden days, you would have to actually like cut this out with the lasso tool or the magnetic lasso tool or the pen tool or, quick select, whatever your kind of method of choice is. ID passes is going to make this schmooper easy for us. So I'm just going to turn the layer on. I'm going to come over here to the magic wand tool. And I'm just going to click boink. And now, right, because it's one solid field of color, I'm very easily selected just that matte. And so with Photoshop, if you have a selection going when you create an adjustment layer, it'll automatically mask to your selection for you. So that's really handy. So let's grab a levels here. Let's say we want to just kind of brighten or darken this guy a little bit. So I'm going to grab levels adjustment layer. You can see, right, that it created the mask for us, which is very nice. And so now if we start to play with the levels, you can see here that I can tweak this and adjust this any way that I want. And it's all set just for this one object, and I don't have to do any work to kind of cut things out. So this is great. We love this. So how do we make it? Well, let's go over to Cinema. So I have a really simple scene here, your usual dancing pig on a computer. We're using Corona in Cinema4d, what is this, R2023.1, beautiful. But the concept should be the same with any version that you are using. So the scene is all set up, it's ready to render. I've got lights and cameras, materials, everything's ready to go. And so I'm gonna come to the Corona menu and I'm gonna come and choose multipass about halfway down. When I click this, it's going to launch a dialog box here. So here's our multipasses. Right now, we don't have any. The system isn't even turned on. On the left here, this is all the different passes that you can do with Corona and Cinema, including Light Mix. And I encourage you to read more about this because it's powerful stuff. If you want to render out your color separate from your shadows, maybe separate from your indirect lighting, and then be able to control all those things in post, this is the place to do it. We're going to stay really simple today. We are just going to come to mask here, and we're looking for an ID mask. So first thing we have to do is actually turn the system on. Yes, this is actually an enable switch that is small and hidden. So please turn that on and then grab ID pass, drag and drop it over here to add it to the scene. And that's it. We're good. We'll come back to this guy, but for now, let's just slide this guy out of the way. And so now we're ready to render. So I'm just going to hit Shift R here, and I'm going to render this to the picture viewer, just like we always like to do here. So even though we're using Corona, and Corona has its own kind of render window, for final output, I always still go to the native Cinema picture viewer. I just love it. I'm used to it, and it works really well with third-party render engines. So no problem there. So our scene is rendering away here, just like normal. Everything looks really nice. Let's say this looks great. And so I'm going to go ahead and stop the render. Denoising will do its thing. Thanks. And here we go. We have our final render. And so now let's save this. So I'm going to save this. I always use a PSD at 16 bits. That's my usual go-to here. And here, why don't we put this somewhere where we can find it again? If I can find where I'm trying to find tutorials, ID pass. All right, let's call this like pig 1. Amazing. All right, so with the picture viewer, we have our render here, right? Over here is our history. So every time I hit render, right, it's just going to add to this list of kind of current renders that are happening in the scene. And this is because we're looking at the history tab. If I were to come over to the layer tab, though, you could see that it looks a little different, kind of like layers in Photoshop, right? And so right here is our ID pass. Our layer is set to image, meaning it's going to show us whatever's happening here in the history. But if I switch over to single pass, now I can actually choose one of these. And so when I click on ID pass, you can see here it is. It's made this beautiful ID pass for us with all of our colors. And so since this is selected, I'm in single pass and I've clicked on the ID pass, same thing. I can say file, save image as. I'm going to save it also as a PSD, 16-bit here. And, oh, where did we put that one? Here we go. Speaking, teaching, tutorials, ID pass, pig 1. I'm just going to add the words ID to the back of it. And that's it. And so if we come back to Photoshop now, so we're done with you. Thank you. We're done with you. If we were to open this up, so let's go back to how many times can I dig through? Let's grab both of these and open it up. All right. So I'm going to now drag and drop this onto our drawing. So we get the two kind of combined into one. I'm just going to use the move tool. I'm going to drag and drop, and as I drag and drop, I'm going to hold shift, which is going to center this image on the other canvas. Since both canvases are the exact same size, beautifully, everything's going to line up for us perfectly. And here we are. So if we want to change the color of our coffee mug, it's as easy as one click. We would set a hue saturation, and then there you go. Now we can change and dial in anything that we want here with our mug. So that's great. We love this, and I use it for everything. We used to use object buffers in the olden days of CInema4d, but this is the new way, and I like it better. It's much faster and easier to use. So that's exciting. Let's look, though, there is one option that you have in here. So if we were to look at this scene, if you look at this Austrian curtain here, you'll see that the curtain is actually made up of one kind of master piece of geometry here. And then I just have instances of it to repeat to create kind of a larger curtain. So that's one version of this. And the truss here, the truss is in a cloner. So I've got one stick of 10-foot truss, and I've put it into a cloner here. We can make more, we can make less, right? So, so this is some kind of replicated geometry as well. Now, if we were to look again, oh, where did it go? Did I close Photoshop? I did not close Photoshop. If we were to look at this, you'll see that each one of these is a different color because they're different objects. And the truss, again, because it's in a cloner, each one is a different object. But chances are I probably want to just have this whole curtain be one object, or I would want this run of truss to be one object, right? So here's what we're going to do. If I come back to the multipass window, which I have right here, if we actually click on the ID pass, you can see that there are some different modes here. And by default, we're using instance. If I were to change this to geometry group, and then we do the same thing, let's render again here. I'm staying here in this single pass mode so you can actually see it build. You can see here that now the truss is all one color because it's all in one geometry group. And the curtain as well is one group now because it's all inside this kind of curtain object. So this is great. So you can set it either way you like. And there are some other modes there which I encourage you to kind of experiment with and see which one is going to be right for you. So there you go. And that's it. Voila. Super easy. And is going to give us some nice, fast, quick ways to make our selections, which is great. Now, one final thought, which is this. I have this pink curtain here, and you'll see that some of it is going kind of behind the truss here. So there are different kind of islands of pink, right? If I come to my magic wand, okay, by default, this contiguous button is checked. And so this means that it's going to look for this pink color until it runs into some other color. And so it's trying to find kind of this closed shape. So you'll notice if I click this, it's going to grab this island of pink, but it did not grab all of this pink that's showing up kind of through the truss here. And I could add to my selection, but that seems boring, and the chances of me messing that up are pretty high. So if I were to uncheck contiguous, now when I click on a color, it's just going to look for that color throughout the whole scene, whether it's connected or not. And so now when I click on this curtain, you can see that everything that we want here is checked. So if I were to just kind of keep doing that, now you can see that I have this whole kind of curtain selected, and we can very easily come in here and start to kind of change the color of the curtain. And that's it. It's super simple. It's going to save you a ton of time in post-processing. I do it now for everything. I just like the first thing I do when I start a new project, set it up, and then it'll render for you at the same time as you're rendering. So it doesn't even cost you any extra time. All right, that's it. Just a quick one. Talk to you soon. Thanks.